If you've been paying attention over the last couple of weeks to AAA gaming, you know that a lot is afoot. There was a major disaster with Ubisoft, and now there are rumors that Ubisoft might be sold to Tencent, and they have delayed, officially, their next Assassin's Creed until February. But I think a lot of people in the know suspect that this delay will probably be extended, perhaps even indefinitely. And even more recently, we have the disaster called Starfield Shattered Space. Now, I've not played this. I cannot bring myself to play this DLC, even though I own it because it was part of the game that I bought originally. But there are virtually no positive reviews for this DLC. And I really mean virtually none. And you have some of the most devoted and enthusiastic acolytes of Bethesda, such as Mr. Matty Plays, giving it a negative review, among many other large content creators that are usually perceived as very even-keeled, balanced, etc., such as Luke Stevens or Legacy Killer. And many people are hailing this as the worst DLC ever produced by Bethesda, in every respect. This DLC costs €30 if you didn't get it with the original game, and it barely has 10 hours of content. And in terms of its content, or rather the paucity of content, it's been routinely compared to the likes of Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty, and other large expansions that offered you far more bang for your buck. So I just want to state all of that at the outset, that Shattered Space isn't very good, Ubisoft has tons of problems, Bethesda has tons of problems, and even more recently, Emil Pagliarulo claimed that Starfield was Bethesda's best game ever. Now, I don't really want to make this exclusively about Bethesda or Starfield, or even Ubisoft, because it should have come to your attention in recent weeks and months that AAA gaming has a massive problem. And that problem is AAA studios putting out low-quality junk and selling it at full price and demanding that you say the game is good, even though it's the opposite and it's very bad. Put in the simplest of terms, that's what's been happening. Obviously, there are a lot more details, but that's basically what's been happening. But I honestly think at this stage, we're at the crossroads. We are legitimately, for the first time in years, at a stage of the crossroads in AAA gaming, which means that we could be at a turning point. Because AAA developers generally don't care what their audience, the actual customers, the people who buy their games, have to say, and are more heavily focused on critic reviews. Well, in the case of Shattered Space, for example, even the critics said it was bad, and that never happens. These are critics that gave the base game of Starfield an 8 or 9 out of 10, even a 10 out of 10 in some cases. And I think what this turning point boils down to is, to be perfectly blunt, the power of the almighty buck, or money. You see, you can continually put out trash again and again and again, especially if you're getting funding from certain sources, but eventually your efforts need to yield returns, and the games you make have to be profitable. And the perception is that your average gamer is a moron, but even if that were true, these are morons, we are morons, that spend money on games, and if you ignore that, you ignore that at your own peril. I think Shattered Space is an indication that any hope that you had for Elder Scrolls 6 should cease and desist now. There's no reason, there's no evidence to back up the idea that Elder Scrolls 6 will be a good game. None. In fact, less than none. Ubisoft is potentially on the verge of collapse, and Bethesda is living in the clouds reflecting criticism, legitimate criticism of their game from the fans, and this paradigm simply can't continue. Now, I think what we could add to this mix potentially is Dragon Age: The Veilguard, because depending on how well this game does, and what the general reception is, and I'm not talking about the most devoted of acolytes who will defend BioWare no matter what, and greenlight everything they say and do, but the general audience, most of the people buying the game, the people who aren't 24/7 fanboying BioWare, or fangirling Solus in this case, these are the people, the regular Joes who buy this game, who are going to decide the fate of Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and consequently BioWare. And I really think in the case of Dragon Age: The Veilguard, it could go either way. It could sell very well, or it could sell very poorly. The reception could be pretty good, or it could be awful. I don't think it's going to be excellent. I don't think anyone in their right mind is going to say Dragon Age: The Veilguard is an amazing 10 out of 10 game. But let's work with a hypothetical here. Let's say that Dragon Age: The Veilguard does not sell well. This will be a further indication of the problem of AAA gaming. And it would add to the momentum of things that have already been set in motion. Because for the first time in years, AAA games have the potential to change, and change in a positive direction. And by that I mean become consumer-friendly and appeal to average gamers. Now, is this guaranteed to happen? No. Could take a long time, maybe even a decade. But what we're observing now, I think, is setting in motion a trend. And if Dragon Age the Veilguard doesn't do well, which is possible, it could do well, but it could also not do well, then that will add further fuel to the fire. Now, I don't want any of these games to fail, but the reality is, we need change. Now, a lot of people will tell me, Spell&Shield, forget AAA, just play indie games. Well, guess what? I do play indie games. Quite a number of them. I support indie games, and I promote them on my channel, such as the recent Dragon's Demand video. And I think indie games are great. But the problem is, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with a AAA budget. And the further problem is, these people making AAA games are given huge budgets to basically cock up everything and produce trash half the time. And that's not good. Wouldn't you want to see games that look amazing, that play amazing, that have great stories, but with a AAA budget behind them? I certainly do. Which is why it's important that a correction takes place in the AAA gaming industry. And in order for that to happen, there probably needs to be a lot of failure. You need to see failures such as Star Wars Outlaws, Assassin's Creed, Shattered Space, and other games, because that might send a message to other developers who are working on AAA games to rethink what they're doing. Essentially, it boils down to make good games. Just make good games. Now, people could wax philosophical and then say, what is a good game even? But a good game is basically a game that appeals to most of the players playing it. Now, I've never played Elden Ring, or Black Myth Wukong, or Space Marines 2, but I know they're good games. They're not my genre, they're not my thing. As you know, I'm an RPG guy. But I know that they're good games because the audience, the average Joes playing them, almost unanimously says they are. And I'll take their word for it. That's what good games are, games that appeal to the majority of people playing them. But when you come to the RPG domain, it becomes a lot more mixed, unfortunately. But the principle is the same. Make good RPGs that appeal to the majority of people playing them. Larian pulled it off. Focus on making good games. Don't focus on politics and other tangential, irrelevant issues people want to escape. We want to be entertained. And so just make good games, irrespective of the genre. And like with any correction, as I said, this is going to take some pain. I think it's going to take a while for AAA to correct. But greed, for better or worse, almost always wins out in the end when it comes to selling products. If the products you're selling, these games, are not good, and people don't like them, and sufficient numbers of people don't like them, then you need to change your trajectory. End of story. And if you don't, eventually you will go under and be replaced by somebody who is willing to make the games that players want to play. So if you stick to the principle of just making good games, I think you'll be okay. But if not, there's going to be a lot of pain. In any event, if you like my content, you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be informed of my videos. It's much appreciated. It helps out the channel. And I'll check you out next time. Take care.